Welcome to episode 16 of Arakko Public Radio for the week of November 30th. We're the Casual X-Men Chat Show where we chat about everything happening in Marvel's Mutants every single week. I'm Rod, and this is what you'd get if Spotify Wrapped was a person, my one and only Omega Mutant, Keegan. This week, we are talking about X-Terminators number 3, digging into the vault to talk about the further adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix and Mr. Sinister's origin story, and mentally preparing ourselves for our marathon week next week. 8 books.
8.
But first, we have a surprise. Keegan, do you know what happens when I push this button?
What happens when you push that button?
Whoa! There's 3 of us.
Whoa!
We have our first ever guest. Welcome to Owain, a.k.a. TheBrokenRecord. We talk about you a lot.
Here. Yeah, I'm finally here.
All right. I'm gonna put you totally on the spot.
Okay.
I want to hear you tell us about yourself, your X-Men journey, and then specifically, like, how involved are you in this Krakoa thing?
So, I am Owain, also known as the Broken Record on TikTok. I cover a lot of sort of comic book content, same as these fine people.
Too generous.
Far too generous. I'm okay at best.
My introduction to the X-Men, I was at my friend's house and we watched X-Men 2, the movie. And
Masterpiece.
Yeah. I remember being sat watching the scene at the start when Nightcrawler is teleporting sort of through the White House, I think it is. And at that point, I was in love. That was, I had to go home. I had to find out about these things called the X-Men.
If there's one scene to make you fall in love with X-Men, that's a good one to pick.
Yeah, for sure. I have been as involved with Krakoa as I can. There are a lot of books. There's a lot. So I kept up to date with the Axe event, and I was reading Marauders, and I've also been reading X-Men Red and Immortal X-Men.
Okay, so you're reading the best of it at least.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're reading the important stuff.
Yeah.
Plus Marauders.
I like Marauders.
We'll get into that probably. No, that sounds great. And that's the beauty of listening to us. Anything you're not reading, we'll tell you about to some extent.
Exactly. Yeah, precisely that.
So,
Except
fellas,
Gambit, really.
Yeah. You're out of luck if you want to listen to my Gambit.
Yeah.
So the day we're recording this ended up being like the world's biggest day for summer blockbuster trailers, like ever.
Yeah.
We got the Transformers Rise of the Beasts trailer. We got a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 trailer and an Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny trailer all this morning. So I want to like gauge everyone's hype level. So I think to start, I'll name one of the 3 and I want everybody to like throw up the number of fingers on a scale of 1 to 10. Like, how hype are you? So let's start with Indy. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1. Tell us how hype you are. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we are all in range here. We got a 6, a 7, and an 8. Who wants to talk about it first? Bulky, you got thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I'm really excited. It looks like they kind of knew that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was a misstep, and it almost looks like they're like, hey guys, super sorry about that. Let's show you what you loved about Indiana Jones. It just, it looks like a delightful time. It's also the third of the 3 trailers that I watched today. So I went in with like expectations on both ends and ended up happy.
Okay. Owen, thoughts?
So I do really, really like the Indiana Jones films. I just think that Harrison Ford needs a rest.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah.
he needs to go to sleep. He's tired.
I will say, I think the CGI. I think he looks younger here than he did in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Every time he ran, looked like bad. And I think they CGI'd him on another actor or something, because the running actually looked better in this trailer than he did 14 years ago, to me at least.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I was right in the middle of you two for hype level. King of Hot Takes. I don't think there's been a truly good Indiana Jones movie since Temple of Doom. Last Crusade always felt like they shoehorned Sean Connery in, and then obviously Kingdom of the Crystal Skull nuked the fridge. So
great film, fantastic Indiana Jones film.
Listen, it's my favorite part of Fallout New Vegas, so it gets points for that.
I'm really curious, is this one going to coin a term? Like, are we going to get for whatever the opposite? Like, when you save a franchise from the wreckage of a nuked fridge, do you unnuke the fridge or something? Transformers Rise of the Beasts. 3, 2, 1, hype level. Oh, see, I'm the other end of the spectrum. I'm 8. I guess I'll start off because I think I'm the only one who can say anything nice. I discovered Transformers through Beast Wars. That was like, I didn't have any of the cars growing up. I got home from school one day in like 2nd grade, sat down, turned on the TV, and there was this crazy CGI show with a transforming gorilla, and I was in. And this trailer looks just as bad as the Bay movies, but I don't care. I'm hype.
I don't blame you. So I discovered Transformers through the Michael Bay movie. So I was 7 when the first one came out. And I'm a young little baby boy. But I adore the first film. It isn't fantastic, like in terms of a cinematic masterpiece, but it's good. It's enjoyable. And I think even the worst of the Transformers films have that enjoyability factor. That's why I'm just straight down the center. I'll watch it, and I'll withhold opinions until then.
I gotta hear this too.
I want to preface this with I love the Transformers franchise. I have seen all of the movies in theaters. I even like the Mark Wahlberg one.
Didn't he do 2? Pretty sure there's 2 Wahlbergs.
You know what? I like the Mark Wahlberg too. They're barely movies. Here's the thing. I was also introduced to Transformers through Beast Wars. And the reason why mine's a 2 instead of a 10 is because it's wrong. Like, in the show, it's pre-man.
This is true.
It is all pre-man. They meet pre-humanoid, like Neanderthals in the show. So I'm like, why is Optimus Prime fighting himself, Optimus Primal? But as I yelled in my group chat with my friends, they do got that Rhinox though, because Rhinox was my boy, and that's why it's a 2 instead of a 1, because they got that Rhinox. And here's the thing: I'm gonna be there. I'll probably see it opening night, and I'll have a blast. But I'm mad about it.
So you're totally right. I think placing it in the 90s made me forgive that, because it's the 90s, and that's when I was obsessed with that show. I am really confused as someone who did really love the first Bay movie, and I hate to admit this when you just said you were 7 when it came out. That I was working in the movie theater when that came out, and I was working there when the second one came out, and I remember I went into the first one saying like, oh, Michael Bay is a terrible director. Like, he's just the action guy. I don't want to see Transformers, and was blown away with how fun the first one was. It was quippy. It was fun. And then I was singing like, oh man, movie of the summer, this Revenge of the Fallen thing. The second one's going to be great. And I hated 2, hated 3, Hated the Wahlbergs. Like, I went to them all, and I didn't like a single one after the first one. I don't understand how this fits in the continuity with those. How is Optimus Prime there? It makes no sense.
Yeah, I will admit that I am just I'm so confused. I will pretend that I'm not confused when I watch it, but I am still confused.
Oh, there he is.
I just have to have him hang out with me for the rest of the show. He'll be
There's the
slightly off
boy.
camera, but he's watching.
Yeah,
He knows. He's there. He knows.
it's the confusion of it for me, and I'm just like, I just, my friend, he brought up a good point. He's like, if I were making this movie, I would not close the trailer with a shot of Anthony Ramos walking out of a transforming car. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I wouldn't either.
It's gonna change every rewatch of the first movie now that we know that, like, Bumblebee was here in the 30s, and then Optimus was here in the 90s, and then they all showed up in 2007 again. It just, I don't know. I'm confused, but that's okay, because I'm just there to watch stuff blow up and see my boy Optimus Primal.
Yeah.
All right, and then we got one more. Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Where are we at? 3, 2, 1. Yeah, okay. You guys are my boys.
Call me Sean Spears, baby. That's a perfect 10.
Yeah, absolutely 10.
Wow, the timing was perfect. James Gunn is putting out teases about doing a Kingdom Come movie. We get the holiday special, and then boom, that trailer just blew me away on every level.
I almost cried watching that trailer. That was absolutely beautiful. It was certainly something.
I mean, I did cry. I'm not gonna lie. I literally watching it, and like with the song coming on and everything, I was just like, well, there it goes. I'm crying.
I am fully convinced James Gunn can do no wrong. Like, that's just...
I mean, just with all of that and what he's done at DC already before, like, helming it.
Before being named CEO and dropping hints on Twitter about, hey, we got Kingdom Come on the way. Hey, we got this on the way. So,
just like, okay.
Do
the
it.
King of DC.
Yeah. You have carte blanche now, sir. All right. Movie talk behind us. Unless, was there like another trailer that dropped today? I haven't even looked. That was it. Just the 3, right?
I think so. It was just 3.
I think it's just the 3.
Just the 3 summer blockbusters. Yeah. All right. You guys want to talk X-Terminators 3?
Yes.
All right. X-Terminators number 3. It opens with Jubilee and Boom Boom blindfolded, fighting off vampires. Boom Boom gets bit, which causes her to scream loud enough to get Wolverine and Dazzler's attention somewhere else in the enclosure. While fighting blindfolded, Jubilee grazes Boom Boom's with a blast, and they bicker with Jubilee saying it's not her fault because her chest is just so big. This turns into a conversation about Dazzler's ass, and that kicks us back out to the framing narrative of the whole team on trial with the Quiet Council, and Professor X giving the look of exasperation that everybody who's ever taught middle school knows too well, while he begs them to stick to the important stuff. After another short aside, where Jubilee and Wolverine assure Dazzler that her juicy dumper is a good thing, and that her working out has paid off, they get back to recapping, though they skip some details at first, which totally annoys the Council. They reveal that the doppelgangers were an illusion created by an enchantment created by slaves from Otherworld, so they used a distracting phone call to the evil vampire to drop them. The girls then came up with a plan to beat the vampires. They have Boom Boom do a striptease for the audience outside the dome, and Dazzler weaponizes their cheers to destroy it and impale most of the vampires with the shards. Dazzler heads to confront her ex, but instead finds the prisoners, who she helps free. Wolverine catches a scent and dives down a hole where she realizes she smells someone familiar. The end reveals that they're on one of the collector ships, and that he only wanted one bombastic mutant and one regenerative mutant, and that the other 2 should be tossed out in an airlock. This book is so fucking fun.
I am in love with this book, 100%.
I said it last week. That's why if we were gonna have a guest, we had to have you this week because we know you're such a big fan of this book, and who knows how many other books are coming out the other weeks it's out. So this was a perfect week.
Yeah.
It's just so unapologetically fun and silly, but still really good and well done.
It's the only time a B movie has ever been truly captured on the comic book page.
Yes.
100%.
I do have one really important question we have to go over before we get too deep in here, though. Boom Booms, or Dazzler's Peach? Where do you guys land?
Well, if we're going off of our game of make more mutants, marry, kill, then obviously I have to go with Boom Booms.
This is fair.
I am also going to go with Boom Booms.
You weren't here. Oh, we never got your answer last week. I want to hear. I want to hear your FMK.
I see.
Dazzler, Boom Boom, and
Jubilee.
Jubilee. Thank you. I was gonna say Wolverine, but you're right. It was the three mains.
I'm
High
going to
pressure.
marry Dazzler.
Okay.
Yeah. I will make more mutants with Jubilee.
Okay.
And I will attempt to kill Boom Boom because I don't think it's going to go very well.
Yeah, I know. We never really got into that part of the game of like method because
Of how?
I don't know that I could take any of them, but all right. I am just in general a Peach man, so I'm gonna stick with my girl Dazzler.
That was legitimately like it was so well like just framed out. That whole sequence was so funny, and just like that final like the shot of the boom boom, like I was dying. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah, it's it knows it isn't serious, and it 100% rolls with the punches. It knows it's not serious, and it goes with it. It is one of the best books I've read this year. It's phenomenal.
Definitely making any like top 10 lists. I do for sure. It's so much fun. I finally had a shift with this issue because it's been really frustrating me that we have all these parental advisory labels and like don't let your kids read this book, and then it's just as censored as most of the books. Like they still blur out all the cuss words, but I think like the humor of that finally clicked with me with this issue, that they're not doing that because they still have censors on them, and there is like definitely more innuendo in this than a normal book, but there's like a legit level to which like the peach emojis instead of saying the word ass was funnier. Just the ways they censor it are pure comedy here. And I mean, there's some crassness, like when Dazzler or Boom Boom's talking about her juices, like that was definitely getting into a realm that we wouldn't see in a regular Marvel book. So
yeah, it was. I liked the fact that when they get back to telling the story after the interruptions of the Quiet Council hearing, it's immediately sort of like, so where were we? Oh yeah, space.
They had to recap even more. Yeah. I said it in the recap, but I have to talk about Professor X, and one, the way he's drawn here. I love the art in this book, but also just the way his reaction. And Keegan, you can back me up here. That was total like, all right, I don't need this part of the story. Teacher face was exactly what he was doing.
Absolutely. I mean, I deal with it every day, and I hadn't even looked at it like from that perspective. But as soon as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, no, you're right.
You've got two kids telling you some ridiculous story, and you're like, I don't need that part. I don't think legally I'm allowed to hear that part. Just get to the part I can actually help you with.
My number one rule is don't make me do paperwork.
Yeah. That's the most sympathetic he has been since like I think about how many times I have sat here and said Professor X is a villain. He is such a douche lately. I hate him, but I felt for the man here. I felt for him so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, he certainly looked like a stressed out teacher, we'll put it that way.
Definitely, 100% stress teacher to the max. I did like Kitty and I don't remember who else, Emma, like snicker, like because that's exactly the role they play. They are gonna relate more to the girls than they're relating to like Professor X's rigidness. So it was cute to have them snickering in the background.
It's great because it
Mystique was
it
the other
was
one.
Mystique, Emma, and Kitty all laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked a couple issues. Maybe it was the first issue, maybe it was the second issue. But yeah, we talked about how they need to do this style of team up more often, where it's characters we don't think of as grouped together, but come together and form these teams. And whether we get an Exterminators volume, it wouldn't be 2 because we had Exterminators volume 3 of these guys again, or if we get this creative team doing something similar with another group of characters, it has to happen. Like this book is getting the buzz. If they don't immediately greenlight more along these lines, I'm going to be so upset.
Yeah.
We need more of this. Yeah. I'm really excited to see my girl Laura one-on-one with the Collector. Like, I really hope that the other 3 deal with the vampire side of it, and we get Laura v Collector scenes one-on-one. She's got a history with him, and I'm ready to see a showdown.
Yeah.
And that would also leave Jubilee to have her confrontation, because that's long overdue.
Well, I think I'm hoping that they're intentionally drawing parallels between like Laura's abusers and Jubilee's abusers and Dazzler's and like I don't know if Boom Boom's got some history they can bring in with either another like cliffhanger ending of 4 that there's a third villain and it's someone that Boom Boom has issues with, or if they're just she's gonna be involved with a vampire situation or something. But I think it's really cool that it's no longer just Dazzler's fight, that there's all these other stakes getting brought in is really neat.
Yeah.
I do have one thing I'm confused on.
What's up?
Do we actually know why the girls are in trouble yet, or is that's still a cliffhanger being dangled, right?
As far as I'm aware, in issue 1 or 2, they do mention like you almost caused a war with the Vampire Nation.
Okay, yeah, I do remember that. That's
but I don't know specifically.
Okay.
I think in one of those issues it was discussed as a international incident. So again, I'm not sure if we know exactly what happened, but it's definitely big scale.
Well, I don't know if you guys have been reading the Blade stuff lately, but that makes sense because Dracula literally has turned like the Chernobyl vicinity,
yeah.
like the nuclear fallout area, into a vampire nation. That's literally like it's recognized by some of the UN nations and stuff at this point. So
good for him.
Yeah, you know, it's
he hasn't had anything to do in a few centuries.
Yeah.
Good for him.
I assume we'll find out like what exactly they did around the time that we find out why they're dressed up as like a witch, a doll, a cheerleader, and a sailor.
I do love that the costumes haven't been brought up once in the whole
not even addressed.
I do love that.
I had no other notes. You guys have any other notes on Exterminators or other thoughts?
I just hope that every other comic book I read in the future of ever is this fun. Or it's just this comic.
Yeah. Or even just one comic a week could be this fun, and I'd be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
If they just pump out something this fun every week, I would be over the moon.
Precisely.
Absolutely. Like, that's exactly it. I want to have this much fun every week.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like I would love this. Like, this would have been a great one to have next week. To have, like, in that pile of, like, 8 dense Krakoa plot-heavy books. Just have, like, a fun thing to have as, like, a palate cleanser.
Let's go kill vampires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
talk Further Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. This was a 4-issue miniseries written by Peter Milligan, drawn by John Paul Leon, released in 1996. It is the sequel to The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, which came out a year earlier. The first issue, it is 1859 in London, England, and Nathaniel Essex is just a scientist who suspects that man will one day evolve into something much more. He's discovered something that he humbly calls the Essex Factor, which he suspects will allow humans to evolve unnaturally in a short space of time. He tries to share his ideas to his colleagues at the Royal Society, but they're mortified. Charles Darwin rejects him outright, but he decides to continue his experiments in private. And following a chance meeting with a man named Cootie Tremble in a bar, he's taken to see the freaks and outcasts that Cootie's men have removed from society. He's mugged by Moody's men, the Marauders, but offers them the opportunity to work for them. Soon they are taking their captives to Nathaniel's home on the outskirts of London. Oh, also, Apocalypse rises from his chambers, having been in hibernation for years. He learns of Essex' work from the Marauders and orders them to take him to see their master. Meanwhile, Essex's pregnant wife, Rebecca, is shocked to discover that it looks like her husband has been preserving their dead son's body in his lab. She digs up his grave and finds it empty. She confronts him before passing out as Apocalypse arrives at their home to speak with Nathaniel. Elsewhere, Cyclops and Jean suddenly appear in London, naked and confused. Not the TV show. Like, they're literally just naked and confused. Had either of you read this before we jumped in and read it for this?
I had not.
I hadn't.
I had read it. It's been many years. So they didn't get into it a ton in the first issue. This does tie so the first series, The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, was the first time they were kind of pulled out of time to make sure something goes right. And that was basically Cable's origin story. So this was more connected to it than I thought when I suggested we read it. I'd kind of forgotten that it did have some through lines. So I'm hoping that it didn't get you too much. But immediate thoughts on the first issue?
It was an interesting read. It was fun. One thing that I always find interesting going back is kind of just seeing what comics were like.
You forget how text heavy they were, right? Like,
yeah, that was
so
my
wordy.
main thought. I was like, this is wordy.
Yeah.
I always, for some reason in my head, I always think it was like the 60s and 70s that they finally figured out how to tell pictures through, or tell stories through the pictures. But like, it was really like 10 years ago, 15 years ago that they finally figured out how to use less words and more art, and that's really interesting.
Yeah. It was like looking at a homework task. It was just so word based, and I enjoyed it. But I looked at that first page and I'm like, wow.
This is a homework assignment. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I did not when I was thinking, 4 issues, and it was his origin. It was a fun book. I had forgotten just how dense of a read it was. It was like assigning you 12 issues of a current book. So
it's just very interesting to see how that shift has gone. Like, it was still a fun read, but I there was a point, because I was trying to read them all, kind of close together. There was a point where I was kind of like, whew, okay, I'm going to take a break for a little bit. Let my eyes rest.
Don't blame you. I apologize. I'm trying to think what. So Mortal X-Men, we saw 36 years later how just misogynistic and nihilist and just like hate-filled Essex was by that point. So I thought it was interesting to see the seeds of that here. Like, he doesn't seem to hate Rebecca. He's more just almost annoyed by her presence. Like, it's a much lower degree of misogyny. And so it was neat to see the evolution of that leading into what we saw in Immortal, which felt really, really dark.
Yeah. It was almost like, I don't know, maybe just because it's 1859 London, at first I was just kind of like, yeah, he's just a guy.
Yeah.
He's just a dude.
Well, I think that's true. I think he was. And also, I had forgotten how involved the Charles Darwin of it all was. So it was really neat with his like comments about I can never be free of a Charles in Immortal X-Men to see the seeds of that planted here with how much Charles Darwin comes after them.
Yeah, it's I think one of my favorite parts about this issue in particular was when Scott and Jean first land in London. They're both in incredibly different predicaments, and and Jean's like, "Oh, don't worry, Father. I'm fine. I'm having a great day." While Scott's being absolutely mercilessly beaten in the sewers,
Yeah.
just kicked the crap out of.
I talk about it in the second issue summary, but the fact that he literally shows up in the sewers is so great. It's just perfect. I did really the art was so dark, like not like yes, it was dark grim, but also dark visually. I feel like that made it hard to read too, and I don't know if that was the translation to making it digital, if maybe on paper, or if that was just an era thing. But so many blacks and browns that they just threw black text on top of that was really hard to read.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. The first issue I could only because I used other sources. I I only was able to find like a very poorly scanned version of it, so it was like very muddy. And then the second one, I was able to find like digital, and I was like, oh.
I also read definitely legal, poorly scanned versions. So,
I was on Marvel Unlimited, but still, even there, not much better. Don't worry, you didn't miss out on too much. I do really think Milligan, even beyond like saying, "Oh, for 90 specific," I feel like he did the creep factor really well. Like as she was digging the grave was a really intense scene. Even now, like I feel like that held up to the test of time. We're like, what is she gonna find? Is it gonna be empty? What's gonna be in that grave? I really dug that scene a lot. The conversation with Charles Darwin was really cool. It was a little overly wordy, over narrated, just like everything else. But knowing that Charles Darwin and his wife did lose their first 3 kids in infancy, so like that whole like I've been there too, or like I know where you stand stuff was really powerful to me. As a dad and as someone that's like my biggest fear for the first 3 years of my kid's life, like that's child mortality is horrifying. Is the Royal Society a real thing, or is that like a fictional group?
I feel like as a Brit, I should answer. I have no idea.
I'll be honest. I was looking at you the most.
Me personally, I've never been invited. I assume it's because my invite got lost in the post. Because if it did exist, they definitely invite me.
Absolutely, and the fact that they haven't yet is the greatest insult.
And exactly. I want you to know if you're ever a guest again, you will be introduced as the true Royal Society member.
Of course,
you deserve that spot. You should also be glad before those trailers came out, we were going to play a different game at the top. We were going to play Who's the British X-Men game and talk about like all of the X-Men characters from Europe. So
I would have loved that. That would have been great. Yeah.
All right, issue 2.
Let's do it.
All
right. Cyclops shows up in the sewers, surrounded by the discarded people from Essex's experiments. They attack him, and Scott unleashes an optic blast, which scares them off for the moment, and he tries to contact Jean through telepathy. Jean, meanwhile, is visited by Sanctity, who is totally from like the first adventure. So that's the part where I feel like this probably lost you guys, but she's trying to fix time. She's saying like, "Hey, we gotta make sure the timeline like works out the way it's supposed to." Who informs her that Apocalypse must be stopped in this time, or the future is damned. She and Scott have 48 hours to carry out their mission. She manages to make contact with Scott, but he tells her she must follow Sanctity's lead, as he's temporarily unable to assist her. At Milbury House, Rebecca chides her husband, but the strain takes its toll, and she retires to the bed. Apocalypse then speaks with Nathaniel and has him show off his experiments. Apocalypse realizes he's a mutant and wishes to accompany Essex, who's meeting some influential people at the Hellfire Club. There, Apocalypse becomes infuriated with the club members' weakness and reveals his true self, telling them they'll serve him or die. Jean visits the Milbury house only to find Essex gone and his wife burying their child once again. Jean then enters the annex and discovers Essex's experiments. Scott, meanwhile, manages to get the freaks on his side, and they take down a group of marauders with his help. One remaining marauder, Oscar, is taken by Scott to be his eyes as he doesn't have his ruby visor. He takes them to the Hellfire Club, and upon their arrival, they see members fleeing the club in horror at having witnessed his Apocalypse's fury. Jean and Scott are reunited, but they are set upon by some marauders who have been enhanced by Apocalypse's alien technology. Jean is knocked unconscious, and Scott is attacked by Apocalypse and beaten unconscious. He gives Scott to Essex to perform his experiments on and offers Essex the Dream of Longevity in exchange for his humanity. He vanishes, leaving Essex to pull Jean out of the river. So
Big
sorry.
issue.
Yeah. Another really wordy one.
Well, the thing is, too, is like, you're saying like this might be where we got lost because sanctity's from the first thing and the time travel. The good news is when it comes to time travel in comics, especially time stuff in X-Men comics, my brain just goes, yeah, okay, cool.
That's the way to do it.
The big thing I learned from this issue was how much that 90s comics love to use the word awesome, because that is used as like, oh, it's Jean Grey's awesome mind powers, or I'm Sanctity and you're here on this awesome quest. And it's like, my husband is having the life kicked out of him in the sewers. Nothing about this is awesome.
Sir, you are just lucky this didn't come out 3 years earlier, or it would have been tubular and gnarly and
radical, perhaps.
Yeah, grindage to the max, dude.
I still use those now. That's an absolute win for me.
That's fair, honestly, very fair.
There are parts of this I still loved. Like, there was parts of it that totally held up the test of time to me. Anything with Cyclops. Milligan writes Cyclops like the most dramatic, over-the-top guy ever. And like that's the Scott Summers I love. I could totally take or leave the Jean of it all, but I don't know. There's just something about the melodrama of Nathaniel Essex's life and like his slow devolution to the insane Nathaniel we eventually see that I had fun rereading it. And if I'm the only one that got enjoyment out of it, I'm okay with that.
Well, I think it's interesting. I enjoyed it, and like the first issue, if you're looking at just that, it sets up Nathaniel and Mr. Sinister to be like a very Mr. Freeze type character before going completely off the rails.
Well, and this was only a couple of years after Batman the Animated Series turned Mr. Freeze into that. So there really could be some inspiration there of like, well, what if Sinister used to be more like Victor Freeze and then it turned into, so
yeah.
Would not be surprised. Any other thoughts on issue 2, or do we want to jump into 3?
Nope, let's do it.
All right. Knowing that he will one day become Mr. Sinister, Jean tries to persuade him, don't take Apocalypse's deal. Feels like she's getting through to him before she has to leave and rescue Oscar Stamp from the crazy Cootie Trimble, which, how have we not talked about what a great name Cootie Trimble is yet? I am disappointed in you two. I am naming my second child Cootie Trimble, and I don't care what my wife says. Essex vanishes during the melee. He returns to Milbury House and finds his captives now free. He hears a scream and rushes to his wife's side. She's at death's door, and their baby is dead. He asks for forgiveness and insists he's gonna make things right. With their final few breaths, Rebecca tells him she cannot offer him the forgiveness he seeks and blames his genius for ruining their relationship. To her, he is utterly sinister. She dies, and Essex goes out to commit suicide. Meanwhile, Cyclops is defeated by Apocalypse and placed within one of the Ancient One's machines. He leaves him there, warning him that once he returns, Scott will be a broken man. He heads to the Hellfire Club and informs them that their duty to him will be to create the conditions that will lead to global war. Essex will develop the pestilence, and combined, they'll bring the world to its knees. Elsewhere, Oscar Stamp leads Jean Grey to where Scott is being held captive, but in trying to extract him from the machine, she too is caught by its techno-organic tendrils. Apocalypse then returns and finds them both his prisoners. Nathaniel Essex then arrives, not dead after all. He delivers his reply to Apocalypse's offer. It's a yes. The freaks, which I feel weird I keep calling them freaks. The book called them freaks. Like I'm not being like a jerk here. The freaks that Jean freed come to their rescue, but too late to stop Essex's transformation into Mr. Sinister. Later, the chamber begins to open as Apocalypse heads to Buckingham Palace to kill the king and queen. I forgot that part of history.
Yes.
Like, it's weird to think about, like, anything that takes place in the past like that, you know it has to be resolved with a mind wipe eventually. Because we saw everybody find out, like, oh crap, there's mutants 10 years ago Marvel time, so it's not like anything could actually have happened in the 1850s that wouldn't have got covered up somehow.
Yeah. I feel like at least one person in modern day London would be like, oh, my great-great-grandmother told me that she once saw this like giant blue man like drowning someone in a river.
Right.
That's got to be a mutant, right?
Maybe that's where Marvel cryptids all come from. Like Sasquatch, and I don't know what the British equivalents are, but the Yeti or the Jersey Devil, whatever you guys have, that's the Loch Ness Monster. It's all the times Apocalypse did some crap.
Boris Johnson, we've got.
Tip of the hat.
It's very good.
Yeah. Just like Sasquatch and Yeti, our variety comes in orange, but very similar.
Yeah. I feel like the darkness of this book that you mentioned is definitely a thing in this issue, because lots of it is underground, but it's also dealing with a lot of death and a potential suicide. So it's dark while being dark.
Yeah.
And I think out of the four, this one was probably my favorite one. I did really enjoy this one.
Yeah, I feel like his transformation was handled really well. Like, that was definitely the highlight, and that's the main reason I chose to read this, because I wanted to see like how he became Mr. Sinister again, because it had been 20 plus years, and I kind of forgot that they decided everything had to be brown text boxes with black text. So sorry, I did not remember that part.
I mean, but especially with Immortal and like seeing his, his pale, gaunt form and then his monstrous form in the Immortal issue, it's cool to see kind of where that comes from.
I love how much it ties in. I love how much rereading it really showed that Kieran Gillen did go out of his way to not contradict anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really neat. Let's do issue 4, and then we'll talk more about the connections, because there is some cool stuff that both, like, this feeds Immortal, and like it's a two-way directional. Nathaniel Essex emerges as Mr. Sinister. Scott wants to kill him, but he pulls a shot away at the last second because he can't really kill him for crimes he hasn't committed yet. So that explains why he hasn't gone back in time and killed Hitler too. So his blast causes the structure to become unstable, and as Sinister begins to fight back, the walls become increasingly delicate. Sinister makes his escape, leaving Jean and Scott behind to save everyone else from falling debris. Once safe, Sinister realizes by looking at a photograph of his dead wife that he no longer feels remorse or love. He's truly free from the shackles of humanity. Oh yeah, Apocalypse was still on his way to Buckingham Palace to murder the royal family, And Sinister returns to inform Scott and Jean of this after killing Cootie Tremble, who was attacking young Danny. They rush there just in time to save the Royals with a little behind-the-scenes assistance from Mr. Sinister. Apocalypse teleports both himself and Sinister to a stronghold, and Jean mind-wipes everyone who was present in the palace. Apocalypse knows that Sinister's been lying to him about his plague, and Sinister admits that he had it changed, so it would only affect Apocalypse himself. The Ancient One decides to let Sinister live, but warns him when he's resurrected once more, he will be his slave. Back at the palace, Sanctity appears and removes Scott and Jean from this time period. From their conversation, Scott figures out this whole thing wasn't just to stop Apocalypse, but also they had to allow Mr. Sinister to be created. Several months later, after Apocalypse has gone into hibernation, Oscar Stamp and Danny head to America and take on the assumed names of Oscar and Daniel Summers. Dun, dun, dun! 2 years later, Sinister watches Charles Darwin's funeral procession. Okay, so yeah, the Summers reveal was pretty heavy-handed, but still kind of neat, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
at least it wasn't revealed that, like, oh, Cootie Tremble is Jean Grey's great uncle.
I wish. I feel like while writing this, Marvel had a big bag of like references, and it's like, right, what's left in the bag? Summers, Oscar and Danny Summers. Perfect.
They just had like fridge magnets, the magnets of words, and they're just like, let's.
But it's weird that somehow, like, not even in the top 10 weirdest things in the Summers family tree. They just have so much rearranging and
That's true.
Yeah, one hell of a family.
I was kind of surprised by how much comedy was already embedded in Sinister's personality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know Kieran Gillen, the first time his first tenure on the X-Men really ramped it up. Like, he's created the Sinister we know now. But even like Milligan, for how dark this book was, there was some good comedy in there. There was a real tonal shift. I felt like made this last issue click, because you really felt that shift from human Nathaniel into Mr. Sinister.
Yeah, definitely.
You can definitely see the foundations of the Mr. Sinister we know now in sort of in the Sinister in this issue. 100%.
Does Scott and Jean's hesitance to blast Sinister because of who he might become, does that tell us how they might handle, like, for instance, the Beast issue? Of just like what a self that was not himself might have done, kind of thing. Now,
okay, so in the hypothetical scenario we've been talking about,
yes,
where they somehow they either revive an earlier Beast before he did the stuff, or I think clearly Kieran Gillen is already tapping into this miniseries. I would not be surprised if that moral angle was taken of, like, this Beast didn't do that shit. That was a different iteration of the man.
Or at least not yet.
Yeah. I want to know how much the like going back and killing baby Hitler like trope was a trope by this point. I don't know when that like concept became like a mainstay of sci-fi. Like, definitely my favorite take on it. Have you guys read Cosmic Ghost Rider?
No.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the idea is the Cosmic Ghost Rider goes back in time to kill baby Thanos, and he can't do it, so he instead tries to raise Thanos to be better, and like it ends up with like multiple loops where, like, at one point, like, Thanos goes back to kill baby Cosmic Ghost. Like, it's a great mini that, if you ever a chance, read Cosmic Ghost Rider. But
yeah.
But this being almost 30 years ago, oh god, over 30. Oh god, we're getting old, Keegan.
Yeah,
almost 30 years ago. I don't know if that trope was a trope yet. Like, I don't know when that became a trope.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have no idea. Though that is a really good question, actually.
this was it's interesting coming out of this where it just seems like he's adopted kind of the sinister personality or the sinister persona that 36 years later he's adopted the Mr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde thing where it's uh he's transforming against his will or not against, I don't know what it is, but like that he's got that like shred of humanity he's holding on to part of the day and then turning into the sinister, and then obviously he at the end of that issue offs the humanness finally completely and has the 4 sinisters. But I thought that was it's interesting how he was able to do that without contradicting anything here, that he was able to create this entirely different angle while honoring this completely.
Yeah, absolutely. He was very careful with the work that he did to do that, and I respect that.
Yeah.
I know it's a completely different characterization of him, but this really makes me ready for Apocalypse to come back. There's just something so cool about Apocalypse, both as a straight villain and the current iteration where he's just looking out for the best of all mutant kind. Or
That's what he says anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna be really sad if we get heel turn from Apocalypse at this point. He finally comes back with his wife. I think what was the wife's name? Annihilation? No.
I'm gonna say yes. I don't remember.
Mrs. Apocalypse. God, Joe of X is gonna be so bad. Mrs. Apocalypse, she's gonna heel turn for sure. But I like to think Apocalypse is gonna stay true to Xavier.
This is it. Right now, this is my
You calling a shot?
record prediction. I'm calling a shot. Apocalypse has a heel turn. This is it. Right now.
Okay. I mean, giving an open-ended timeline like that, you're safe because you know eventually everybody has a heel turn eventually. But okay, before Krakoa ends, if he has a heel turn, you will get credit.
Yeah.
Apocalypse is gonna heel turn, and Fall of X has nothing to do with Krakoa. It's the fall of Xavier.
Ooh.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. I mean, we need
Stunned
Xavier
me
to
to silence.
come down, so. All right. If we're all making crazy predictions, though, I want mine on the table.
Do it.
Magneto will be alive before 1 year from today. So before 12/1/2023.
Naturally, for the event called Rise of M. If that happens, you're welcome.
Hey, I'll take Rise of M over the even darker Dark Crisis we're going to be getting on more Infinite Earths over on DC.
The darkest crisis on not enough Earths.
All right.
Crisis 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Never use that phrase in a TikTok.
Really? Oh,
so
right.
I made a TikTok titled because I was making fun of the Batman 2 Detective Boogaloo, and if you have the syllable Boogaloo or the phrase Boogaloo in there, they assume you're part of the Boogaloo Boys, and they nix your, like, I had that video taken down, and I had to appeal it twice to get it put up.
Oh,
it was a Breaking 2 reference. Like there was nothing political in that. I make some political TikTok, but there was nothing political in that TikTok. But they assumed I was.
I'm actually very curious. Owen, has any information about these Boogaloo Boys gotten across the pond to you, or is this just a uniquely American problem?
I must admit that I have absolutely no idea what a Boogaloo Boy is.
Okay, so you've heard about this insurrection thing we had, right?
Yes.
So we've got a whole bunch of like right-wing crazies who want to. So one of the prominent groups, to prove just how intimidating they are, call themselves the Boogaloo Boys, and they're probably the worst of it. Like they're the ones that had a guy that drove a car into a parade, and like they're like full on like take down America completely.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that like the phrase would be like flagged in some way, but also Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo is possibly the first internet meme ever. So
yeah.
It's weird that they didn't include it. They don't have some kind of filtered like checker or correction.
Right.
Just a guy.
Yeah.
It's just one guy
Just a guy.
so much.
When you think about the size of these apps, like why don't they have like one guy who's literally in charge of that? Like there probably is enough videos that he could just and they can afford it. Anyways, any other thoughts on further adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, or Phoenix and Cyclops? Other than you hate me for making you read it.
I don't hate you.
No, I don't either. How could I?
Right? It was a good time. It is like it's an interesting history lesson in seeing how comics have changed.
Yeah.
If you had asked me what 90s comics were like, I would not say that they used more words than they do now. I probably would have assumed they used less.
Yeah.
So to see that was very interesting.
It's really interesting because I mean kind of what I said earlier, that I feel like it was about, and I hate to give the man credit, but it was the Bendis era where we finally figured out less narration could be more.
Yeah.
And that's weird that it was that recent. All right, next week.
Next week
is a marathon. Dark Web, #1. Extreme X-Men, #1, which we're going to read the first one because it's a new series. It is very likely we're only going to read Extreme X-Men #1, and it will fall off of the Arakko Public Radio read list. But Immortal X-Men, #9. X-Men Red, #9. Marauders, #9. New Mutants, #32. X-Force 35. So that is 5 straight Arakko like centric or Krakoa centric, like important A-list books, all in the same week because they couldn't move any to this week.
No.
And then Captain Marvel 44, which is an X-Men tie-in, so we're probably going to revive an old segment called Around the Marvel Universe. And that's not it for next week, though. Any thoughts on the books before I move on to?
It's so many, and also the fact that I have to read another Amazing Spider-Man book on top of this because I forgot that it tied in.
Oh, you haven't read last week's yet? I'm sorry.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's okay, man.
Just do it before Wednesday, so it's out of the way. We're doing
exactly.
an early record. So, but that is not it for next week. Next week we are formally launching season 2 of Arakko Public Radio. It's gonna have a lot of little changes. We're gonna have some updated graphics on screen. We might have some updated like technology aspects. I think, no promises, our first merch is going to be available.
Ooh.
If not, it'll be the week after because there's some technical snafus. But I'm going to try to have our first merch available for purchase. And possibly the biggest change is we are going to be joining Crossover Comics. Crossover is a collective of comic fans who mostly met through TikTok and other social media. It doesn't change ownership of our content in any way. It doesn't really change our content much. Our audio feeds aren't going anywhere if you're subscribed to Spotify or through the RSS feed. If you follow us on YouTube, our new episodes are going to go up on the Crossover Comics channel instead. It'll be linked below, and I'm going to post a reminder on the Arakko Public Radio account next week. Basically, it's a bunch of like-minded, really cool comic book fans that we've all been connected with for a while. They have a couple other podcasts they have going. We just figure a rising tide lifts all boats. So we're going to jump in with them. They're really cool people. We're really excited to have gotten that invitation. Like I said, does not change a thing. Any thoughts? Anything to add, Keegan?
I mean, I'm excited. I'm going to stay just as dumb as I always have been.
You are not... You are the brains of this operation. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, that's dooming us all, isn't it?
All right. We want to give the world's biggest thank you to Owain, a.k.a. TheBrokenRecord, for being not only our first ever guest, but like the only one to have written in for...
easily our first ever listener.
The write-in segment like every week. Do you have anything you want to plug? You're going to have your screen name like on screen, but... other social media you want to talk about, or
follow me on TikTok? That is where I post most. follow me on Twitter because sometimes I'm funny. Same name. And that's really it. Maybe one day I'll launch a MySpace, but that's about it.
Now, you have long rumored you're going to have a podcast of your own. Is that still in the pipeline?
Yes. I'm just a very busy boy with work, but
don't blame you.
soon as I get some time off, it's coming, and I plan on having you both as guests, obviously.
And I haven't looked yet. Did you launch the Brokies or whatever you're calling them? Your daily into the year?
Yes, the Broken Record Awards.
Go with Brokies.
The Brokies. I posted the first one this morning as of recording this, which was the award for the most unexpected soundtrack inclusion of 2022.
Nice. Okay, so an explanation of what the Brokies, the Broken Record Awards, are. Owen is taking on the monumental task of he's going to give a year-end award every day this month. So it's 31 different awards. So I'm very excited. I'm going to go check that out as soon as we're done recording here because that sounds like a really good first one.
Yeah. And if there may or may not be an award for best podcast coming up this month that I think you guys should pay attention to.
Okay. Hey, it might get us a second listener. All right. And does anybody has anything to add? I think that will do it for us. Make sure you like us, review us on all the places, follow us, or if you're on YouTube, follow Crossover Comics. If nothing else, tell a friend who you think might enjoy us. I'm That Nerdy Papa Bear on all of the socials. Keegan is Bulk Ranger. Until next time, remember, you're either a Boom Boom guy or a Dazzler's Peach guy.